I don't think my life would be quite the same without the influence of Shakespeare. Even before I knew what Shakespeare was or what poetry was, my mother used to recite poems or little bits of verse to me. And among those fragments were things like, "Where the bee sucks, there suck I, in a cowslip's bell I lie," which I now know is from The Tempest. Or, "Who doth ambition shun and love to live in the sun, seeking the food he eats and pleased with what he gets," which is from As You Like It. And I think this gave me an early appreciation for poetry and rhythm and for the sound of Shakespeare, and a feeling that it was something fun and definitely not anything to be daunting or overwhelming. After that, it really wasn't until secondary school, which for me happened to be in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, that I really started to learn about Shakespeare. And I have a feeling that the first play we read was The Taming of the Shrew, and each person in class had to learn part of a speech. Again, this wasn't at all daunting, and now I have to credit my teachers for introducing us to Shakespeare in a fun and interesting and easy, relaxed way. And it was interesting to learn the archaic language and the different word order and to be able to recite the verse. Like many people now, I then studied Macbeth. In those days we did O-levels, still in Malaysia, and which is the kind of old-fashioned equivalent of GCSEs. And I got to know Macbeth for the first time. I thought it was wonderful. I enjoyed learning the quotations. Some of those quotations have stayed with me until now, which is many decades later. And now I'm helping students to learn them for their GCSEs. I returned to boarding school to do my lower sixth year, and that's when an English teacher introduced me to Hamlet. I thought Hamlet was wonderful, and I think it's probably still my favourite play. It's quite muddly, it's long and involved, and there are some really serious themes going on. Not that there aren't serious themes in Macbeth, of course. And I really enjoyed getting to know some of those speeches really well. And of course, after that, I went to university, I went to Cambridge, and we did a lot of Shakespeare. I pretty much read all the plays and the poems, and one of my final papers was tragedy, which included Greek tragedy, some other plays, and a lot of Shakespeare. And that's when I started to find out what I liked among everything that was available written by Shakespeare. And for me, it's always been the more miserable plays, the great tragedies, Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear and Othello, the Roman plays. In particular, I really enjoyed the exploration of what happens to people when they have power. At Cambridge as well, it was my first opportunity to see a lot of productions. It's a great place to be because, of course, students put on productions, and then also in the holidays I would go to London. I also went to Stratford-upon-Avon to watch more and more productions of different Shakespeare plays, and that was great. But it's always been, for me, important to know a play before I see it in production. After Cambridge, a lot of life happened, and there would be the odd bit of maybe watching a film adaptation or a play or something like that, but really I was thinking about other things other than Shakespeare. Until something like 15 years ago, when somebody said to me, could you help my child with their A-level English? And that was the beginning of my tutoring career, which has been so satisfying. And I was trying to work out which plays I have worked with students on. Obviously Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet, because most students do one of those for GCSE. I've also worked with Othello for A-level, Midsummer Night's Dream, Twelfth Night, Much Ado About Nothing. So all of those I've read all the way through with students and looked at in detail. Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet are ongoing every year, which is great. The better I get to know a Shakespeare play, the happier I am with it. And also I try to go to as many productions I can in order to, because it's enjoyable, but also in order to be able to talk to my students about them. And in addition to that, there are lots of plays that I've taken extracts from. For example, Mark Antony's speech in Julius Caesar. A lot of students have really enjoyed that. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. And we look at how Antony used rhetoric. And just recently, I've started on a slightly different project, which is rereading some of the other plays that I haven't read for a very long time. So I started with Antony and Cleopatra, then Richard II, then As You Like It, and now I'm in the middle of Julius Caesar. And I'm really enjoying that. It's so interesting to see how I see the plays now versus how I might have seen them in my 20s. And for a couple of them, I actually have the same copies that I had at university. And that has meant that I could see the notes I made and the underlining I did and wonder why, I thought those parts were important and not other parts. And then I see how my views might have changed and also how they're the same today. I would say that Shakespeare has influenced my thinking. Some of the figurative language helps me to understand what it's like to be human. In Macbeth says, "Present fears are less than horrible imaginings." The things we imagine are more scary than the things that we are dealing with right now. And I remind myself of that often. I also really like the way he says, "Full of scorpions is my mind." We've all had those horrible, dark, crawling, unpleasant, malevolent thoughts in our head that we didn't want to have there. And also the way he looks at the passage of time. The older I've got, the more interesting I've found that, because obviously I can look back on a longer life. I can think about time, what has gone apparently quickly, what has taken a long time, how things have changed. And in terms of the wider world, what he does with people and power and politics and conflict is absolutely fascinating, completely topical, and very much an illustration of what the world is like now, as well as how he probably saw it more than 400 years ago. So without all of that in my life, how different would it have been? Shakespeare has helped me to form my thoughts, to see things in figurative ways, to think about imagery and lots of creative ideas, and also the rhythm, the iambic pentameter, which a lot of the plays are mostly written in, has helped me to feel connected to my own language. And I think that's really important because for me, language and thought are very much intertwined. So those are my thoughts on the influence of Shakespeare in my life.